Hello, everyone. Today I'm gonna talk to Hey Myles. She's a pianist, and she'll be talking to us about her career and music in general. How are you doing?
Hi, Julio. First of all, thank you so much for having me. I'm
My
honored to be
pleasure.
invited. I'm doing really great despite the cold and rainy weather. How about you? How are you?
Everything okay? No cold and rainy weather in Brazil.
Lucky you.
Never. Yeah, but that's true. And I was wondering, at what age did you start learning the piano, and how did you choose this instrument?
That's a long story, but you're here because you want to interview me, so I think we
Yeah,
have time.
for
Um,
sure.
I started piano fairly late when I was 15 years old, and I came to it completely by chance. I was studying abroad in Spain, and it was a big transition naturally moving from the United States to live in Spain. And I found it very difficult. And I know this is a very long story, but I would visit the library across the street from the house where I was living. And in the back room of this library, they had an upright piano. And I was drawn to it and I played on it, not really knowing what I was doing. And I was inspired to find a piano teacher, and luckily, there was a piano teacher who lived close by, who took me under his wings and encouraged me despite my late start.
Sounds amazing. So it was love at first sight, we can say.
I guess so, yeah. I haven't
Great.
stopped.
And what does music mean in your life? What benefits do you think it brings to an individual?
Despite my late start, music for me is sort of a grounding point. It's something that I can always come back to. It's something that since I have started has always been here for me, no matter what I'm going through in my life, no matter how I'm feeling. The music is there, the music remains. And my relationship with the piano, of course, has only deepened and evolved, which is a beautiful thing.
Fantastic.
Now, for an individual, you're asking me how music can benefit other
Yeah,
people. I believe that music heals. I believe that this is cheesy, but music can transform hearts.
for sure.
Yeah.
Something really intense, right?
Yes, absolutely. It allows us to feel deeply and to connect with ourselves and with others. It's something that we desperately need, I think.
For sure. Especially in times like this that we are living, right?
100%. Yes, music unifies.
For sure.
Mhm.
And I was wondering, that's a tricky question for you. You're
Mhm.
an unconventional musician, let's say it like that, right? Perhaps you have tattoos, right? Which is
Absolutely.
different for a classical musician. And how was this acceptance in this world of music that we live in?
See, I wouldn't know any other way, would I? So you could argue perhaps I would have more opportunities if I didn't have tattoos, although I'm not entirely convinced that would be the case. Because I was already criticized as a musician before I had tattoos. So the criticism hasn't stopped. Perhaps it has changed angles more than anything. I wanted tattoos since I was an adolescent, actually, and I hesitated for many years before getting a tattoo for that precise reason. I'm a classical musician. There's a certain image that I need to uphold, where the classical musician is serious, right? We think of, generally speaking, a man wearing a black suit, probably at least in his 50s or older, right? Okay, I realize this is not the case today, but this might be a stereotype that many people hold. And finally, in 2017, um, after the death of my father, I said, you know what, I'm going to get a small tattoo in memory of him. And then I continued after that because I realized it was something that meant enough to me that I wasn't going to regret it. And come what may, I was ready to take on any challenges that would come as a result of my tattoos. But I'm not sure that there have been any other than a couple of hate comments online, but that comes with the territory.
Yeah, I get
Does it
it.
answer your question?
Yeah, it does. And this is a tricky one because everything is very individual and you cannot generalize. But what would you recommend to a student that would like to be a professional musician in the future?
Trust yourself. Take all advice with a grain of salt and get as much advice as you possibly can. I personally had wonderful mentors, but I also think it's important not to stay with somebody for too long and not to take everything that is said to you as an ultimate truth. Because unfortunately, I did have several teachers who said I would never have a performing career. And yet here I am. I'm making a living playing piano. And I feel like it's only going to increase and I'll only get closer and closer to accomplishing my dreams. So I think it's very important to have this self assurance and this resilience.
Good. And what about your musical influences? I mean, do you have favorite composers, the one that you can express your soul better when you play?
Okay, I'm not gonna say that I play these composers particularly well, but I will say that I have an affinity to certain composers, namely Schubert.
Mm,
I love Schubert deeply, and to me, Schubert has a fabulous sense of humor. My husband, for example, says, "How can you say that Schubert has a sense of humor? His music is about death." And to which I reply, "Yeah, but he's making fun of death. He's not
yeah.
bothered by it." um, Now, is that why I resonate with his music? No, probably not. But there is s- sort of a drawn out narrative, and I feel that Schubert takes us on a journey that I relate more closely to than in other composers, and I can't exactly explain why. Alternatively, I would say that I'm drawn to classical composers and early romantics. So Beethoven, I really do appreciate Beethoven all the way up to Chopin. I recorded the Chopin nocturnes, and that was a project very close to my heart as well.
Fantastic. We're gonna listen to you playing some Beethoven here, right?
Yes.
Amazing. And what can you tell me about the future, the plans for your career? What do you want to achieve in the near future?
To continue on the path that I'm on, I regularly collaborate with composers, and I find that to be so rewarding to work with composers who are. I feel like we're going to start this over because I was going to say something I was going to say alive and well, and it was like, well, yeah, of course they're alive and well. They're
Oh yeah.
contemporary composers. That would be redundant.
Wait, is Beethoven dead?
Yes. Oh
Um,
my gosh.
when?
Spoiler alert.
Yeah. That's fantastic. I understand what you mean. It's important to, to value people that compose, that are alive, that are doing a great job at the
Yes.
moment, right? So you can collaborate with them.
Absolutely, and tried my best to put a spotlight on their music to help them get the recognition that they deserve and develop some friendships along the way, which I feel really blessed to have developed these relationships with composers through working with them and bringing their music to life. Alternatively, I love presenting music on stage. I had a baby girl about a year and a half ago, and so I stopped performing for a little bit. But now that she's older, I'm returning back to the concert stage. And next month, I'm performing in Strasbourg, and I'm playing something that's completely different for me. I'm actually playing covers of pop songs. Now, they're not just, chord in the left hand, single note melody in the right hand. These are intricate, very nuanced covers. And I think that it really offers an interesting perspective. So I can't wait to share that with people. And I will be, of course, sharing excerpts online for people who do want to listen.
Fantastic.
Yeah, and of course, to continue with classical music, I performed Beethoven's Third Piano Concerto 4 times this season,
Amazing.
and yes, it's probably my favorite concerto by Beethoven. Everyone talks about the 4th concerto and the Emperor, but the 3rd one, I keep on coming back to.
I really love Beethoven. My favorite ever,
Yeah,
everything that he composed is very emotional.
it is. I agree.
Great. And I was wondering, where can we listen to? On which channels can we find your music? Do you have a Spotify channel or YouTube?
Absolutely. Yes, you can find me on any major streaming platform, social media, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok. I'm all there.
Fantastic. And to finish this interview, I would like to, in the end, we're gonna listen to something of you playing. And also, what could you say? Would you like to send a message to musicians all over the world?
Probably the same thing that I would give to somebody who's aspiring to be a professional musician.
Good. Stay alive and safe? No, just kidding.
Yeah. No, I can think about how to phrase it differently if you would like. Okay.
Yeah, no,
Yes?
yeah. So,
Yes, tell me.
no, yeah, go on, move on.
Oh, okay, okay. See, this is the issue with doing online interviews. Sometimes, like, we don't know when to keep talking or not.
No, yeah, that's great. And I think I'm gonna keep it raw, really it was natural, gonna keep the raw
Oh.
parts. I find this really good as a chat.
Okay, well, hopefully you found it endearing.
Yeah, gonna do the edition, it's still recording, yeah, but I thank you very much for talking to us. It was fantastic to hear about your career, and we're gonna listen to your music, your passionate way of playing. It's fantastic.
I appreciate it, really. Thank you.